Let me see. Um, yes, I think it's recording.
Great. Well, welcome to our first Fireside chat here at Change Agents Worldwide. My name is Joachim Stroh, and I am your host today. We've put together a new slide deck to introduce Working Out Loud, right? And we wanted to show you a few concepts of Working Out Loud and going back a little bit in history so you can catch up and see what Working Out Loud is really about. With us today are Catherine Shinners. She's a solo change agent extraordinaire out of California. We have John Stepper here, whom you may know from his book, Working Out Loud, and his recent TED Talk. And we also have Simon Terry here, who is currently our lead for Change Agents Worldwide and very engaged in practice in Melbourne, Australia. So this chat is really dedicated to Working Out Loud, and we want to see what we're going to take out of this, and what we're going to have coming out of the event that's called Working Out Loud that started this week, I believe on Monday, and it's going to run throughout this week. And you should check the hashtag for Working Out Loud. That's Wall Week, or Working Out Loud, WOL, so you can see and follow us and see what else we're going to put out this week for this event. Okay, I'm going to start this now, and let me switch to the slide deck here.
You always do have the best slides, Joachim.
Absolutely.
Slide envy.
Well, with the help of Martin Watson here, great street artist, he had put this out there a while back, and I'm using this to say, here is it. Here's a way to open the curtains on Working Out Loud. So, what does it really mean? And we want to dive into the concept right now. This is a fireside chat here that we have today. So, we're not going to show you a presentation. This is not a webinar. Instead, we have four of us sitting around the fire and talking about some of these slides. So it'll be very casual, and you will see how we move along with the deck. Okay, let's begin. A few words from Change Agents Worldwide. Simon, you want to jump in and say where we came from and what we're doing at Change Agents Worldwide?
Absolutely, Joachim. So Change Agents Worldwide really tries to put Working Out Loud in terms as the way we operate. It's kind of part of our core operating system. We're a network of practitioners of future of work practices, people trying to change organizations and make it accessible. Everyone on this call is a member of Change Agents Worldwide. And really what we do is we bring people from inside organizations, enterprise change agents, and solo practitioners together in conversations and collaborations about how we move forward this agenda and really try and make it easy for people to engage and connect.
Has it only been 3 years? It feels...
It's only been 3 years. It feels longer, and it's, it was started by Susan Skrupski and Joachim and others, and in the last year, I've taken the lead, but it's very much a networked organization where everyone collaborates and creates events like this under their own leadership.
It's been, I'd say, the best network I've ever been a part of. It's really, really good.
Incredible collegiality, such a learning community as well.
Yeah.
It's been a great journey.
Yeah.
Right. And I like this quote from Harold Jarkey here that you see on the screen. He calls it a transparent cooperative. So we really operate differently than these big consulting companies, right? Who come in, march into an organization and bring the army of consultants, right? And trying to bring in certain change through their own methodologies and platforms and ways of changing organizations. I mean, we're doing that really differently at Change Agents Worldwide. So we have a network of people who are individual practitioners or they work for boutique consultancies and we just connect, right? So if there's an opportunity coming in, a project, a client coming into our space, we just connect, reach out to each other and see who's going to help in which case and for what kind of client work.
Yeah, and I think that transparency is also key to that, to the kinds of trust you can create and the way you can work in a co-creation opportunity, bringing the client into the middle of our conversations, bringing partners into the conversation. We work with people beyond the boundaries of change agents worldwide. And I think, that's where working out loud is such a powerful tool for us.
That's it. Right, Simon. So let's talk about working out loud. And since not everybody's familiar with that term, I was at an event in New York last week, a knowledge management cafe, and lo and behold, half of the audience never heard of the term working out loud.
But half did.
Yeah. So of course, let's make sure everybody gets on the same boat here, and let's go back a bit in time. So here's Dave Weiner. I'm sure you have heard about him. For me, he's sort of the pioneer, internet pioneer, right? He was there early days. He started one of the first blogs called Scripting News. I was subscribing, in the 90s, I think he did that. And came up with, he's co-founder also of an internet protocol called RSS. So this is a specific news feed, stands for real simple syndication, that lets you aggregate news feeds from different blogs. And I'm using it a lot. I'm subscribing to over 100 different blogs, and that's my tool really, to use it in the morning to see who's blogged what article. That's a very efficient way to do that for me. If I would go to every blog and check it out, it would be impossible. But he also coined the term narrating your work in 2007, 2009, 8-9, when he also founded his own company to push out his blog software. And that concept really stuck with a lot of people. And that's also something that we've built on, a lot of people have built on. We want to take a deeper look now, what happened to that term, narrating your work, right? And here's Bryce Williams. He's also a member of Change Agents Worldwide. And he took that term and said, hey, let's make it into a formula that's more tangible, right? So people can grasp the idea of working out loud and can apply it in their own organizations. So Bryce works for Eli Lilly in the KM function, in the technology lead function. And he came up with this working out loud formula around 2010 or so.
That was the first time I saw it in print.
Yeah, I remember we were both at a Enterprise 2.0 conference. And
right.
A lot of the enterprise social software was just coming to market in a broader way. And he wrote this blog post, when are we going to start working out loud? And I remember it really captivated the thought where we have the technology and the tools, but it's really the approach, it's the sense of transparency, it's the sense of inclusion that you can have with a more open way of working, getting more diverse inputs to your work. And he really encapsulated it in this kind of compelling formula that helped people really understand. And I remember when I was first helping clients implement enterprise social networks in their organization, I was trying to help people understand the nature of how it could change the way they work. And Bryce's formula was absolutely, they just said, oh, I get it, I get that this is the way I can work using these kinds of tools.
I mean, the thing I love about Bryce's formula is you sort of up to that point, we were very influenced by knowledge management and the idea of managing artifacts.
Right.
But Bryce's formula kind of says, hang on, we can now share work in progress, and we can share context by narrating that around the work in progress. And I think that's the powerful idea for me about working out loud, is that it's not the work you finished, it's the work that's still going on. That's where the value gets created.
Well,
love this.
Joaquin has a wonderful slide that captures that thought coming up. But I do think one of the key points you just mentioned, Simon, was bringing more of the context of the work into the process, sharing that tacit know-how among a group of people working together.
Yes, that's really it, Catherine, and that's a very good formulation, Simon. Let me talk about this in another slide here. So the formula is there on top, narrating your work plus your observable work. That's all nice and good, but what does it really mean? You know, when I present these slides, I have questions, still have questions. What do you mean by that? You know, what actions do I have to take, and why would I do something like this, right? So here's a simple table here. I'll give you some examples of, I will point out two of them actually, what it means to work out loud. So an example here, starting on the left column here. Actually, let me turn on the laser pointer. How's
Yay.
that?
Oh, that's quite zoomy.
Yeah, +1.
This one, heart. So on the left side, it says an example action here is showing colleagues what are you working on while your work is still in progress, right? So what you would do is you work on your stuff, but it doesn't have to be final, right? It doesn't have to be nice and polished. It just can be work in progress, and you push it out there. You let people actually see what you're working on. Why would you do this? So here on the right side, some of the reasons for doing this is, well, your ideas, you know, they become suddenly applicable in other work environments, right? They look at your ideas, can give you immediate feedback, and can add to it, right, in ways that really help you improve it, and rethink what you just put out there. Another thing here on the second column, on the second row, is responding to colleagues' requests or questions, and responding to those more in an open forum, right, rather than using narrow channels like email or face-to-face meetings, right, or meetings generally. You know, you sit in a room with a few people, and that's the only group that knows about what happened. So saying working out loud means responding to it in an open forum. So everyone becomes really aware of your thinking and aware of the issues that are happening inside the organization, right? It can be in a small context like your work unit, or that can be in a bigger context, and it can be in an whole organizational wide context, provided you apply the right filters. Right, Catherine, you mentioned that earlier today. Clay Shirky's idea of it's not the information that's out there, right?
Well, that certainly there's more information than ever, but there's also, and we'll talk a little bit about this later, that Clay Shirky said what we have is really a filter problem, and that's kind of also a skill set that people can develop in terms of learning to master filtering and alerting mechanisms. But I think when I look at this chart, what I also see is quite often the way knowledge workers work is to get onto a project and immediately try to focus down. And I really like the read and respond part, especially that it's like that, keeping it more open and big picture, not zeroing in too soon. You might have an opportunity for people, as you might be working more transparently, working out loud, people are going to pick up on this. They may have already had an experience. I'm sure many of us heard so many times where people work hard on figuring out something, and then they spend all this time on it, and then somebody towards the end says, you know, we solved that problem last year.
Mm-hmm.
But they weren't in part of the dialogue.
Harold, who we quoted earlier, Harold Jarkey does a good job with his personal knowledge mastery.
Yes, he does.
Yeah, about exactly this. Like, okay, here are the skills, and he teaches a range of courses on it, on how to seek, sense, and share information, so you can develop mastery yourself as well as help others around you. Yeah, I think he's one of the leading voices probably in that.
And I think you know, both PKM, personal knowledge mastery, working out loud. What I like about both of them, and it's inherent in what Joachim's got on the slide here, is they're reflective practices. by making you stop and think about how to share what you're doing, how to communicate it, provide context, you're giving yourself just that little bit of perspective on your work. And that's really valuable to help you reflect and improve your work as you roll along.
Right. Okay, let's move on. I want to talk a little bit about the intersection here of narrating your work and the observable work, to make that more accessible and visible in the organization. So you see this overlap here. So let's follow the dotted line down there to the next slide here. That, by the way, is always the favorite slide. People point that out. They love this. Maybe because of this energy that it creates, right? It emanates. So what this is, you see on the left side, the icons again, right? So there's stuff that's in the flow. So this is stuff that I'm currently working on right here and now, right? That sits and is in the flow. This is narrating my work. This is sharing my work. This is posting my work. This is open forum, as I mentioned in the other table. And this is stuff I already do, right? So it's not taking any extra effort for me to do that. Now, if you go above the line here, above the flow, as I indicate here, so this is work that really needs extra effort, right? So this sits outside the normal flow of work. So this really is a prevention for me to start narrating my work. I can't do it because I have to do some of the stuff, the extra stuff, right? That forces me to stop and think and do something else before I can move on. And stuff like this, it includes filling out forms, right? We've all seen this on your HR portal, where you have lots of forms to fill out before anything gets done. You have publishing engines in organizations where you have to fill out a lot of metadata, right? Before things get out, and they all fill into a company-wide taxonomy, right? So you have 10, 15 fields to fill out before a document can be submitted into a repository. So all of the stuff that I call here above the flow, right? Extra effort. It's not in the flow. It's not like making it part of your day-to-day activities. It's above it. And then at the bottom here, you see stuff that's hidden from flow. So these are really invisible information flows that are sitting in these private channels. And that can be email conversations, right? Hidden email change, can be hidden information silos. There are a lot of repositories in the organization people don't even know about. So I used to call this in another slide, it's the dark matter of the organization, right?
That's good.
Yeah, I like that. I'll use that.
Yeah.
Does feel kind of dark in those enterprise content management systems, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Right.
Tacit knowledge is dark matter, right? It's hidden away. It's locked in up here.
That's true.
It's released through interactions, right?
Yeah.
Through the application and interactions, and and I think we need to not lose sight of why this might be important, because work is more complex. Companies want to move more nimbly, more agilely in the marketplace. They are trying to accomplish something they talk about as digital transformation. And most people are working with very different kinds of people all over the world, expected to interact with people who have very different sort of cognitive styles and also expertise. And what you want to get with teams really is this flow where you're able to bring all that together. And you're right, there's lots of stuff I think the enterprise has really tended to drive people in the hidden from flow a lot. Email and voice communications, just kind of solo problem solving, and not opening it up to a diversity of thought.
Sure.
That's right, Catherine.
I like this, Joachim, if I can just add.
Sure.
I like the above the flow concept, because that's the pushback people have on working out loud, that it requires effort and preparation, and that it has to be perfected before they work out loud. Whereas what I think you call out beautifully here is it's actually just about choice of channel, choice of way you respond. You might get an email in, but you can answer that email in a much more open and public way that it benefits other people. And I think when people start to reflect on that, they can see this isn't as hard work as they might have thought it was. This isn't as much of an extra effort. It's actually, you learn over time to do it in a lean way.
Exactly. That's a great way to put that, Simon. And that's exactly also what came up in my recent discussion on this slide, where someone immediately said, oh, working out loud is extra effort, right? I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
Well, it's actually not, right? It's a change. It's a bit of a change of your habits, right? And it's using a bit different tool sets, It's not your personal, file server and system anymore. It's something that is shareable, can be put out there very easily. Just push this button instead of that button here, and it goes to an open place, and people can start looking at it.
And it's also more pull than push. Yeah.
Exactly. Great.
And it's almost, speaking of new mastery of new skills, as we're segueing soon to some of John Stepper's techniques. So.
Right. Yeah. Before we do that, I have one more slide here because I wanted to juxtapose two typical processes in organizations today. Or the typical, really, that's on top, where you don't see any working out loud. And this is a process where you start here on the left side. Let's say you want to create an article, or there has to be a new document pushed out and published on the internet side of an organization, right? So what typically happens is you start, and then someone creates the first review copy, owns that copy, right, and pushes it over to an editor, creates a further edit, and then pushes it over to a graphics design person, who pushes it over to another person who maybe is giving the final approval. And after that, it goes out the door. To me, this is kind of a representation of frozen knowledge, right? It's a very stringent, very stable process that might work for some cases, right, where you have some products that go out the door on a regular basis. This is routine work. There's no big change, and they just have to be cranked out one after another. That's fine, right? But to me, this also represents what I call here a dead document, because after it's out the door, that's it. It's frozen in stone. It's set in stone, and actually few people care about it. There was a recent study done a while back, actually, at the World Bank, who looked at how many people actually are reading the stuff that they put out there. Tons and tons of stuff.
Crazy what a large proportion just weren't even open.
That's right.
Yes.
They weren't even opened. Yeah.
And they could have been great. I mean, it's not to say that they weren't worth opening. It's just that people, it didn't reach an audience.
Exactly.
It wasn't connected to people that way. And as we all know, with our social media revolution, that it's the social context that really gets people engaged many times. Well, I really like also the bottom. Well, you may want to walk through that a little bit. But what I liked about the bottom, the feedback loops, the sense of flow, is that you are bringing more into the process. And Simon, I know we've talked a lot about, these are where you get the points of innovation. When you are including more people in the process. And when you say including people in the process, it can just mean making it more visible with a sense of accessibility and awareness. Not that everybody has their finger in the pie necessarily, but there is the opportunity for people to contribute to at least perhaps pull in information into that flow that others wouldn't have been aware of. But and you're also, I think, to get to that point of the complexity of what the kinds of issues and challenges in the workplace, you need to have processes where you're bringing in easily diverse expertise. So I like this flow a lot.
I actually think you could push it one step further, Joachim, which is, I think there are the examples where it never ends up in a document. Because what happens is the conversation of these feedback loops creates knowledge in the community, and they actually don't need to document that because they all share context.
Great.
And so you see this situation where, great feedback loops change the process. Sometimes you set out to create a document and you go, I saw this in a financial services organization where everyone was obsessed about creating a compliance policy. And we actually created a conversation, public open conversation to create the compliance policy. At the end of the process, a policy document spat out, but no one cared about that anymore because they'd all educated themselves about the compliance issues through the conversation, and all the stakeholders had been involved. The document became irrelevant versus the conversation, and that's a powerful shift in effectiveness.
That's a great way. Again, Simon, love that. So maybe there's not even something coming out there. The reason why I put the living document there is the way I work, for example, is when I create a presentation, I send that to some friends or publish it out there, let people review it and look at it directly, and get them some feedback from them. And it becomes a document, a living document, because even after I've given a presentation, I still go back to the same document and make changes to that, right? So it can happen that people actually go in there, make suggestions, or I go in there and rip out slides, replace some visuals, and do something else with it. I mean, that was hair-raising for some people. How can this happen? If this is out there, then you go back and make these kind of changes.
Right.
So this goes back to, some work habits, some ways of working are changing when you begin to work out loud, right? Great. So let's move on. John Stepper.
Who's
Nice
that guy?
suit.
The making of a movement.
Yeah. What? So we've known each other, like I said, it seems like a long time. Certainly since around the time of Bryce's post, or shortly after that. And it was around that time when I was such a believer, right? Like, these enterprise social networks, almost that enterprise 2.0, and this is the great equalizer at work. This is what's going to let people take control of their reputation and of their access to other opportunities and other knowledge. And it didn't, right? And I think the reason it didn't is that it appealed to a small minority of people. So certainly the people on the phone, probably the people listening to this, the people who attended the Jive Worlds and the IBM Connection conferences, it appealed to them. But most people at work, this was kind of foreign. This idea of being open, of sharing your work, of working out loud. So what I worked on was to extend the idea to make it simpler, more human, maybe less about activity and tools, more human and more generous. So you put that together, and it became less about I have to do a lot of things to share my work and make it visible to some return, but instead it was about building relationships with people. And this sharing was one subset of your contributions in the service of deepening relationships. And that's what gets, we're social animals. So that kind of goes with the grain of being a human being more than sharing what we happen to be doing during the day. And that was kind of my shift. And I've been probably working on that for maybe, I don't know, 5-6 years.
That's a great way to put it.
Wow, I didn't realize it was quite that long, John.
It started with just admiration for the Dave Weiners and Bryce Williams and the ESNs.
Right.
And then it was I think my first kind of time I started writing about it was in 2011. And then they introduced me ESN in 2012, and I just kept going.
Yeah. I want to get into the writing too, John. But I also want to mention the TED Talk you gave here was incredible. Everybody who watches this, please go out and Google John Stepper and the TED Talk. It's fantastic. Gives you a great idea of what it is.
So of course, working out loud, I wrote about it. I've read about preparing for it. Yeah, it feels it wasn't the best feeling to prepare for being in that little red circle, but I'm looking forward to the next one. That's the
There you go. There you
growth
go.
mindset right there.
Iteration.
Yes, that's great. I mean, your book is incredible, John, and I love the title. The subtitle for a better career in life. I try to, take these three dots here and try to lay it out here in a way to say, hey, this is about a better career. Build your purposeful network and access more opportunities, right? So this is you and your career, right? And then on the bottom you see it's also a better life, right? You learn how to increase your contributions, you increase your social skill and values for the organization. That's all happened here. You mentioned Harold Jarkey's work, right? Personal knowledge mastery, right? This is all things that play into that and help you build this stuff. Fantastic. And it also has an impact on the organization. We shouldn't forget that, right? So once you do all of this, it suddenly mobilizes a lot of expertise, maybe hidden expertise in an organization that people didn't know was there before, or people weren't aware of that they can contribute, right? Or they have their skills and they suddenly surface and it percolates throughout the organization. That to me is a fascinating aspect of what you wrote about, John.
I think there's this balance that we all strike between if you tilt too far towards the individual, it's kind of like wellness at work. It's like, well, okay, we'll let you use the yoga room, on Tuesday, but that's different. It's not work, but we're letting you do it because we're an evolved company. And if you're too far towards what's good for the organization, then you're like any other change management program. We're gonna be different, and you need to do this because we told you. What I try to do and continue to try to do is you have to appeal to intrinsic motivators. People sense their need for control.
Yes,
confidence, because if you don't do that, they just won't do it.
That sense of personal empowerment is so important, and so I've actually taken this work that John has done, the book and the guides, and brought it into a client situation, and it is remarkable, astonishing the impact this has had on specific individuals. And what's really interesting to me is not only were they more empowered personally, they were doing things that they had never thought possible, reaching out in ways that they started to develop a sense of what it meant to contribute to their own networks. But they actually started developing an incredible leadership.
You made them feel something, right? You made them experience something, and that's the hook, like for any kind of change of behavior.
Well, I facilitated and supported it, but the process of that kind of mastery is so empowering. It unleashes other things like a sense of leadership that I was just remarkable to watch.
Yeah, there's a nice phrase for that, self-efficacy. Right, this like
efficacy, hey,
self-efficacy, right? Yeah,
if I could do that, I could do this other thing, whether it's towards some other goal or take the next step.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly when you work inside the machine, that's a great feeling to spark inside people.
I love the untapped potential which kind of flows out of that, because that's when you start to get that serendipitous experience. It's like, oh, wouldn't it be great if I could connect with someone who knows how to play the piano? And someone else in the circle goes, I play the piano. I've always played the piano. What do you need to know? And it's like, I thought you were an accountant. I didn't think of you as a pianist. It's those little moments that you just go, wow, so that untapped potential.
Or a flamenco dancer.
Well, whatever
you do on your weekends, Catherine. Yeah.
Cool. So Catherine, you mentioned these circles, right? I want to talk about the Working Out Loud circle that you introduced in the book, John, and have 2 slides for that. And one is talking about the way this whole program is structured that you put together. And I love this idea of putting that out as levels. You know, there's a starter place here right in the center of this diagram that says, keep it simple. You know, there's something you can start very small and you sort of, slowly increase your social value, right? Your knowledge value, your skill value, and your contribution value, right? But it's small, you know, it's a small start, and you get stronger, get bigger, get more knowledgeable, get to level 1 here, get to level 2. And it's I think it's a 12-week process, right? Where you get together in these circles. And at the end, you really become sort of, you call it linchpins, right? Someone who's really starting to have an impact on the organization. That is fascinating to me.
Yeah, this is this phrase I stole from Pema Chodron of all people about start where you are, because I wanted this to not just be for people who are comfortable with social media or extroverts or pick a profile. Look, if you're in the middle there and you're really you're just starting with traditional channels and you're barely able, you're showing some universal gifts like appreciation, great. Any progress is good. And if you're one of us and you're kind of been doing this for a while, but the circles can make you a bit more purposeful and systematic, also great. It's not a contest. There's no judgment. There's no test. Just can you, like any other good habit or practice, can you deepen it over time? That's what I was going for. And I think at least we seem to be going in the right direction.
You know, one of the things that I liked about this slide and this whole thought process, John, that you articulate, when we think about working out loud and working transparently, it's a different stance from I have to produce and I have to perform to I can contribute. And the way organizations are structured, the way people are managed and rewarded is quite often in an older model in terms of viewing human talent. And when we're talking about needing to bring everybody's talent into a collaborative work process, their social capital matters, who they know, their networks matter, not just their skills, and all of their tacit knowledge matters, not just their specific expertise. And the way they bring it to the table is about contribution to a bigger whole.
I'm glad you brought that up, because something I found is universal, is that people think very narrowly about what it is they have to offer.
Yes.
And even in Joachim, in your slide with the flow and above the flow, it's, I've been to talks like, okay, if you're going to work out loud, first thing you do is you write a blog post. I'm like, really? 95% of the people who even start a blog don't keep it up. So no, that's not the first thing you do. First thing you do is you see something that you thought was useful and you say, I thought that was useful. That would be a nice place to start. And Simon, you do a fantastic job, and I love the way you write, of here are all of these different ways that you can make a contribution. Here are all of the different kinds of contributions you can make. And a lot of them aren't strictly about work. They're from Dale Carnegie in 1936. That's just attention and appreciation and recognition. So my point being, what I find funny is that I'll go into some big place and here it is. It's like I'm telling them how to be a human being again inside the office. Once they swipe their badge, they kind of forget that there are all of these other things that make up their shared humanity that they can offer to other people. That is the basis of a relationship.
Great. Thanks, John. I want to point out for our viewers, listeners out there, these working out loud circles, right? John has created a whole series of these circle guides that are free, that are out there, and you can download them and use them actually to get started. on working out loud in your organization. So these working out loud circles are really small groups of people here, right? And they start to connect, right? They start to share in a new way and try to pick small goals, right? Small, you mentioned personal goals, but they also, obviously collective goals in there, and ways to reach out to others, across the organization. So over these 12 weeks, you become stronger and stronger, build a bigger network of relationships, and find more people who can help. You can help with and reach out to, and at the end, you really have created some new habits, right? And that's really what it's about. New habits that can help you work towards any other goal, right? You take these habits and take it out there and build something else. That's fantastic.
We're doing a lot of experiments now. We'll get to talk about this later or in a future call, but about these public guides use public tools and are kind of appeal to a range of different goals. But what's kind of cool about some experiments I'm doing now is that the more you can refine the guides for a specific context, whether that's inside a corporation or inside a community of practice or nonprofit, then you can appeal even more explicitly to the goals of that organization and their technology and their culture and their examples and the stories formed within them. And that makes it even easier to practice.
Yep.
And that's what we're doing now, along with some measurement, to say, look, so if you're, let's say, HR from some big company, this is the best learning and development program you can have. It's scalable, it's cheap, and it's peer-based, so that you don't need the instructor in a room. These people actually do it over time, and that's what this is turning into, at least in some places.
Cool. All right, let's move on to.
There she is. What a lovely.
Right. So Catherine took again the concept of working out loud and took it into a new perspective and thought around the dynamics of working out loud. So Catherine, please.
Yeah. Well, why don't we shift to the next slide?
Sure. Here we go.
One of the things that I started thinking about was, and this is really sort of the foundational elements of working out loud, especially with teams of people as you're working with projects. But like our network, one of the things that's really foundational for us is the trust. There is a real sense of understanding and trust and affirmation. And we do have a sense of shared purpose around supporting one another and supporting clients in some of their future of work journeys. Sherpa guides, as you say, Joachim.
Right.
And when we talked about that contribution piece, John, there was this sense where it is not sort of things that flow down in a command and control way, but the strength that comes from reciprocity. Mm-hmm. And when you lead with a sense of contribution and generosity, you're really able to feel like you're bringing everything you can to a situation, and that it's also going to be of value.
That's Adam Grant's Give and Take. That was a popular book. That was largely it, right?
Yes, that's right. It's a good Adam Grant thought, and like what that diagram you just showed a little bit back, Joachim, with the lamp, the magic lamp, is to start small, and you get the sense of what it's like to be in the flow just by starting with very specific, relevant situations, everyday context. This isn't about, grand reorganization, grand redesign, but sort of what's the Zen saying, chop wood, carry water. Everybody's got that part of their work. So let's do the next slide. So when I was thinking about, what are the dynamics when you combine the technology, when you combine the working out loud dynamics together. And you also we were talking about personal knowledge mastery, you go from the me to the we in this idea. But we've talked about a lot of the ways we work with working out loud is the narration, the putting it out there in an observable way, inviting response. And that's really this conversational flow. It's more dialogue than outbound. And then the other thing that when we talked about Harold Yarke's personal knowledge mastery, I find that this is an area where people do this very much in their personal life, perhaps. They're very engaged digitally as a consumer. They're very adept using mobile devices. They're out there on social media. But when they get within an organization, that sort of sensibility just shuts down. And I don't know if I'm not seeing the text around these bubbles, Joachim. I don't know if you need to advance it once more.
Oh yeah, let me bring those in here. One more thing I wanted to say here,
yes,
which I really like about this, is the sort of the engine that it triggers. You start by working out loud. You have the icon here for narrating your work and making it visible and accessible. So you set something in motion, right? And suddenly it triggers other things, right?
That's right.
Just because you started to narrate your work, means there's content awareness, means there's accessibility. And here you mentioned these outer things. And how do you do this? Is it complicated? Well, no, that stuff is already there, right? You have streams, you have alerts, you have filters, you have tags. All of this stuff is already there in organizations, in most organizations today, right? So you only need to find a way to use that effectively, and then you set this thing in motion. You mentioned the engine of working out loud. Put that at the core of this thing here, and it suddenly begins to turn, right?
It's a virtuous cycle.
That's right. Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly.
And I think one time there is this sense that we feel maybe overwhelmed by the flow of things, but that content awareness and accessibility is really about opening up the silos on the one hand, but empowering yourself to get the information you need when you need it, or get access to those interactions and those conversations when you need it. It doesn't mean that it's, you're just awash all the time. And then I think the other pieces about this are the way that we broaden that to the we, which is about, as you have that awareness and accessibility, you also have a sense of expanding connection around that conversation, and you have capabilities to I like to use the term network agency. Here is that efficacy thought again, where thinking about yourself is not a cog in the wheel or a position in an org chart, but you are an agent on the network, and you can activate what you want. And that also brings a broader context and maybe a cohesion with your own network. And you're not just waiting for the formal pieces, but you're activating your own network around things. And then obviously this does expand knowledge over time. And it brings that, there's a sense of value here. When you put all this in motion, you are bringing more of your own value to any context, but the context around you is getting more value, the organization, your teams, whatever.
Right. And what I liked on this chart here, Catherine, is you see others doing that, right? And then suddenly you start thinking about, well, what about my own profile, right? How do I present myself to the organization? And you suddenly start thinking, oh, let me maybe update that, right? Let me become more visible, right? Let me share actually the knowledge that I have with more people, not only with my boss, right? And you start building on that. And again, you said that's the cycle you create. That's fascinating. And then you have another slide here, Catherine. When you zoom out now.
Simon, you had...
Yeah. I just wanted to add one point to that thing, and I can add it here, but it's so there is too much information in every organization, and everybody's got too much work. So, when you look at organizations, they want agility, they want to better manage information, they want to better manage the work. What I love about what Catherine's put out here is it's a shift from being a passive participant in the work environment to actively trying to control those things. Because if there is too much information, whether or not people are working out loud, if there's too much work, whether or not people are working out loud, we might as well have people actively engaging and speeding that cycle of agility and learning and improving their personal efficacy, the way John talked, because that's what's going to help people out of the overwhelmed feeling that we all suffer at the moment.
It's very interesting that you said that, because it brought to mind the last few slides is, and one of the reasons we want organizations and companies want and need that is that they really have to have sort of the endpoints of the network functioning independent, in an empowered way. And I was thinking about, I was at the Future of Work conference here in Berkeley, out in the Bay Area in September. And Chris Fasell was speaking along with Rachel Mendowski, and they work with the McChrystal Group. And the Team of Teams book was based on the special operations in the Middle East, and how they had to rethink empowering their organization from a strictly command and control to a more network-based organization. And so there's so much value in here for the individual. There's so much need for it because of the organizations need to be able to be more adaptable and responsive to opportunities, challenges out on the, and that all has to be firing at the edge of the networks, right? You can't wait for someone from the top down to say, okay, it's okay to do that now.
Would you say, I think all the companies I've been speaking to in my limited time as a startup, they all say the same things. Like, they want what you just said, and they may have paid some money for some technology. They've put out some slides from senior management. Not close. I haven't met anybody, any large company anyway, that's close. And so something's missing. And
yeah, it is. Something's missing. And it gets introduced by way of technology, perhaps, under the aegis of digital transformation. But it really is a mindset shift at all levels.
Yeah, we keep coming back to this thing. It's human. It's not so you can introduce transparency of technology, but unless you've got people sharing what they're really thinking and what they're really doing, you haven't got effective transparency in the organization. You can put in technology that provides underpinnings of trust, but you need people to change decisions and streamline and facilitate an organization. You can give people agile technology and agile work processes, but unless they genuinely use them to learn and be organizationally effective, they haven't moved the dial. And I think, General McChrystal, and I've heard it said by Adam Pisoni and others, it takes a network to serve a network. And I think, that's where we've got some of our organizational patterns need to be reviewed with this idea it's a network of humans, not a network of jobs and roles and processes. It's actually.
I love that, Simon. I love that.
Which ironically, it's human resources that created that. Right? Here's the roles and competencies framework. You are an A7, Simon, and it's the bullet list of things that make up you, and that doesn't work very well.
Yes.
Because feel systematic and fair. It just.
So I'm just gonna we've been at this almost an hour.
Wow, time flies.
It does. I just could do this all day long. So it doesn't mean we have to stop, but I'm just going to let you know. So let's
Sounds
keep
good.
going.
Let's keep going, right? If everybody's okay here. We still have some logs here we can put in the
We have some
fire?
more logs on the fire. We can keep going.
I hear the crackling every so often.
Yeah. I'm toasty warm here in Australia. It's heading into spring.
That's right. That's right.
Good. Let's keep going. Here's Dennis Pierce. He's also a member of Change Agents Worldwide, and he couldn't join us today, unfortunately. But he's an enterprise knowledge architect with Lexmark out of Kentucky, and he has written his dissertation on working out loud. I want to show you one part of his dissertation I found very interesting. He created this 2x2 diagram that shows you on two axes. Here on the left side, where's my laser pointer? Here we go. On the left side, again, you see narrating your work, right? And he calls the individual ideation, right? So this is when the individuals pick up, start to write about their work, right? And others beginning to look at and understand what you're doing, leading to more innovation across the organization. So you move from a lower left quadrant here of a fragile organization that's fragmented, that's siloed, towards an organization that can become more innovative just by picking up this stream of narrating your work, right? So writing about it in a different way, so that it becomes, and that's the other axis down here, it becomes more observable, right? And this is where people, other groups can pick it up and start to collaborate on the work. And because of that, maybe they find ways to, make it more efficient, to improve certain processes, to thaw out certain thinking they had in the past, and thus become more productive, right? So you move again from a fragile organization towards one that's more productive. And the goal here is, if you do both, if you really follow Bryce's formula of working out loud, by narrating and by observing, make it observable, you come to what he calls an agile, or more of an agility-driven organization, right? And out of this, and I found this very interesting, is out of this, you can now start thinking about other emergent structures, other kind of structures and properties that might come out of an organization that's a lot more agile. I mean, a lot has been talked about. You see the stuff that responsive.org guys are talking about,
Right.
and other small upstarts to talk about how to empower teams, how to make them more agile. There's a lot going on, and Dennis was talking about even further into the future, into autopoietic systems, into complex adaptive systems, into fractal organizations, and hierarchies, right? There's John Husband, who's also at Change Agents Worldwide, who came up with the concept of a hierarchy. That's a whole other conversation. But look it up. It's very, very.
Yeah, I think that's a subject for another fireside chat.
Yes,
Definitely.
right. Good. So that was our sort of a perspective from working out loud from different people that we know that started this whole movement here, and we want to give you some tools and tips maybe on the way. Here's a menu of working out loud activities. I don't want to go through all of the items here, but here you can pick and choose certain things where you can get started on certain aspects of working out loud, right? Around making it visible and making work better, creating some shared value, and building a social network and making it all more purposeful. So look it up later. We'll also share the presentation online, so you can take a look and grab some of these slides. Here's another one. This is from Bryce. He created a simple template for working out loud, where he simply states, pick an activity, number one, right? Pick anything in your organization, list what the typical default behaviors, that you're doing today inside this activity. And then after you've learned some, key concepts of working out loud, think about what would it look like tomorrow, right? If you would apply some working out loud principles to that, and just list them out, write them down, and see what the benefits are that are coming out of shifting your behavior towards more of a working out loud behavior. You can also, mention some of the risk considerations and some of the mitigation things you want to add to that. just to be on the safe side. So HR is happy about a presentation you might give about working out loud. And also at a later stage, once you've got a prototype or got a pilot going, think about, go back to the people actually, and think about, listen to what they've done, capture some stories, right? So you get some examples of how does that new behavior in action look like, right? What have they done with that? And again, this is a template that you can then use to push it out in the organization and share it with a few more people, and they can then pick it up and do their own things, right?
Wonderful.
Okay, and I want to close with a bit of a dark side.
A tarot reading. Oh.
I know John would like this. But, there's some things that are holding working out loud back, right? It's all dependent on certain things, certain alignments in the organization. And I just want to highlight a few of them here. I mentioned dark matter earlier, right? So there is a lot of dark matter inside the organization that you have to figure out where it is and open it up, right? And avoid the dark chatter too. That's the other side. That's the stuff that's not relevant. That's the chit chat that's also happening in an organization, right? That is not part of working out loud. But look at this. There's, of course, knowledge hoarding happening. There's people sitting on that knowledge and using this as a means of power and control, right? That's still, of course, prevalent in an organization. But it's, if you ask, I had a person yesterday responding to that and said, it's actually not that true that people willingly hoard their knowledge. It's just they don't know how to do it. They don't know actually that these other channels exist, and they are willing to reach out to actually use these channels and are willing to change habits, right? So it's not the traditional model of there's some people up there, they all hold it tight, right? That's my stuff. And I won't let go, But if you bring in some of these key principles here of working out loud, they may let go and really change minds and change opinions. So other things here include this inertia in the organization. Of course, there are outdated processes, outdated tools, outdated technologies that keep you holding back from introducing some of these core concepts. A lot of narrow channels are still prevalent. Of course, people use email. They use email meetings. They use face-to-face meetings. Very narrow stuff that it's hard to break out of. So that's holding it back. It's also the fear of speaking up, right? So
is that what that is? I was waiting for that last one. I'm like, no idea.
I had a few acronyms going, and many of them weren't good. So.
This is a PG-13.
Yeah.
Rating.
Could have been fear of standing out, which is another challenge too. Right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that's right.
Speaking up or standing out. That's right.
Very good. And functional units too, right? We're familiar with HR, what their terms are, and what they would like to see in the organization, but changing too, right? I mean, they recognize the value of working out loud and begin to incorporate that into their thinking, right? Into their ways of providing some of the frameworks, loosening up the structure, having people slowly breaking out of their boxes, right? And allowing them to do more, take on different roles.
I think I like ending on this slide because, if this is the end, because it points to the work that we still have to do, and the work that certainly I have to do, that Simon's doing, that Change Agents is doing, is how do we make it easier for people to practice? How do we mitigate the risks? How do we leverage the institution instead of just throwing rocks at it? And there are pilots at various companies that I work with, that Simon works with, that Catherine works with. So this is like the early stages in many ways. I mean, Facebook is still less than 10 years old, right? This is the early stages of how do we help people change behavior. And man, we have a lot of work to do, but it does feel, and maybe Simon, I'll ask you, since you've been working out Loud Week for a while, it feels like the dent that we're making in the universe got a little bigger this year.
Yeah, I mean, John, I think your book and the work you've done with circles and the reference clients have catalyzed an exponential step in the global movement of working out loud. And I think we are now at the point where we're tackling this. And you know, you can, I always remind myself when we try and do this work that, you know, there's 150 years of management theory that we might be pushing against. And we're a couple of years into that journey. So, you know, remember that the world changes slowly, then fast. And what I think we might be seeing is that, you know, some of those early points where working out loud, finding its place, it's finding its connection to other ascendant disciplines in organizations, like agile, like design thinking, like, you know, innovation, collaboration. I think that there is a great time now. And I just come back to your point before, John. Do simple things, do them often, find 5 minutes a day to, you know, touch the treadmill, move the wheel, advance the journey. And I think that's the potential for us.
Well, this has been just a wonderful conversation. I always enjoy. It is Happy Working Out Loud Week.
Yay, Wally.
Yes.
And
lovely. I love this.
Yes, and we will post this and share it and make it all transparent, as they say.
Let's do it again.
Thanks, colleagues.
See you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to stop